Hi there, welcome to my channel. It's EC here. In my last video, I shared roadmap tips for those getting into tech. I also explained how doing guided projects is one of the best ways to learn, especially when you are getting started. So in this video, we'll be building a guided project together in Power BI. So this is it right here, and it's on renewable energy consumption in the US. It's a follow-up to a project that I created on electricity generation and emissions in the US. So let's get right into it.
All right, here's the renewable energy consumption dashboard for the US. It's simple and straight to the point, one page layout, so you can see everything at a glance. So we'll start off with the total renewable energy consumption, where all the sectors and energy types are summed, and that's in trillion British thermal units. Right next to it, we highlight the top renewable source. In this case, it's biomass energy, and below that, we've got an area chart showing trends over time, so you can quickly spot patterns in terms of growth, and then you have dips here. 2001, you can see that there's a dip in terms of consumption of renewable energy, and on the right here we have a donut chart breaking down consumption by sector. So you think industrial, electric power, transportation, residential and commercial sector. And finally, we have a bar chart showing how much each energy source contributes in terms of consumption. And we have the top 10 here. You can also filter this dashboard with these slicers at the top here. If we have the year here, and it ranges from 1973 up until 2024. But for the area chart, I've excluded 2024 because we have just data for a few months. And then the energy source, we have the different renewable energy sources rather, and then I'll just select solar energy just so we can see how much has been consumed so far in terms of solar energy, and then we have the trends as well. Okay, so that would also apply if you use this sector slicer, but let's use this donut chart as a slicer. So I will just select maybe I'll select residential, and then you can see how much energy has been consumed, the top renewable energy, and the likes of it. So super beginner friendly, but still very functional. Let's get right into building this report. So this is Power BI desktop. What I'm going to do now is I will save this file. So click on file and then save as. So I'll save it here, and I'll just save it as U.S. Renewable Energy Consumption Overview. Okay, so I will save that. If you don't have Power BI installed on your computer, you just need to go to the Microsoft Store. So this is it. And then once you type in Power BI and search for it, you'd see this come up, show as download. But because I already have Power BI, it's showing as open. So let's go back to Power BI. The data I'm using is a CSV file. So on the home tab here, if you select get data, you see the common data sources, and then I'll select CSV. So once I select that, I'll go to the file where I have the data set. So this is the data set here, and I'll just open it. So this data set is from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So once that comes up, this is what would show up. What I'm going to do here is that if I load it will just take me back to Power BI. But once I click on transform data, it will take me to Power Query. And then that just loads up. And this is what we have. So this is the data set. We have the year, the month, the sector, and the different energy sources. So you have hydroelectric power, geothermal energy, solar energy, and then you have that up until biodiesel. There isn't much cleaning to do here, but we are going to have add some rows into columns and columns into rows, just because it's better that way for analysis. So what I'm going to do now is I would select this year, month, and sector. Then I'll right click, and then I have on pivot order columns. So it just means the rows are going to become columns and the columns are going to become rows. So once I do that, I then have the hydroelectric power and then the consumption value and the likes of it that way. So I'll rename this to energy source, and then this would be consumption, and that'll be in trillion BTU. So this is all in, so it's like 0 trillion, and this is 0.57 trillion, so that's trillion British thermal units. Okay, so that's all done. So I will just close and apply, and then we're back in Power BI. So we need to create a date table now. So once you go to model view, I've created a video on creating date tables. So I'm just going to just copy and paste that instead of writing it all over again. So I'm just going to create the date table, and I'll just click on new table here. And then I'm going to paste this. I would link the video for date table on this video, so you can go ahead and check it out. But what this simply just means is that we are creating a date table by using the add columns function, and then under the add columns function we have the calendar function, which has a date from 1973 1st of January till 2024 2024 31st of December. And then right underneath that we have the columns, that's the year, and then we have the year function, the month number, the month year, quarter, and the year month. So this is already explained in details in one of my videos, which I will link here, but I'll just go ahead and enter. Okay, so we have this. We barely need so much here, so don't stress about that. So I'll go back to the model view, and then we have this. So we have to link this date table to the data set, right? If I click on year, right, and if I drag year onto year here, it gives us a many-to-many relationship, which we don't want. And the cross filter direction is both. I've also created a video on data modeling and the reason why this wouldn't work. I'll also link that to this video, and you can go ahead to watch it. But this data set is saying that you find multiple years here. So 1973 is repeated multiple times here, and then 1973 is also repeated multiple times here. We don't want that. We want a many-to-one relationship. So in order to do that, I would create a column in the data set to make sure that we can change the cardinality from many to one. Okay, so I'll just go ahead to cancel that. So I'm going to create a column in this data set, right? So we'll just go to data set, and then we'll create new column. So that new column, we'll just name it. You can name it whichever you like. So I'm just naming it fact date, and I will use the function date. Okay. And the date function would request for the year and the month in that table. So the year we're using here is dataset, and then we have dataset year. So that's the table name and then the column name. And then the month will be dataset month. So we have dataset month. And then I will just close that and do a comma 1. Oh, and then that's comma 1, right? So what this does is that for every month in this data set is going to, so instead of us having 1973, I'll just go back here. Let me hit enter first and show you what would happen. So what we have now is that for every month, it just creates a date that says 1st of January 1973, 1st of February 1973, and like that. So that's just what it means instead of just having it this way. So I'll go back to the model view and then mark this as a date table first. It's important that you do that. So I'll mark that as a date table, and then I'll drag this and drop. So now we have the many to one relationship, which is exactly what we want. So we have multiple 1973 here, but just one 1973 reflecting on the other side, and the cross filter direction is single. Like I said, you can watch it in the video on data modeling. So I'll just go ahead to save this. Okay, so that's all done. Now let's begin to create the report. This is very important because it just makes it way easier for you when you're creating your report. So this initial stage has to be completed first. Okay, so the size I'm going to be using for this visual, right? Once I click here, I'll just go to format. So you most likely have format on the side for yours or somewhere here at the top. It depends on how your Power BI is set. Usually when you just install it, the format button is always like underneath here or just right by the side. So I'll just go ahead to format. Okay, and then it shows me the page information, canvas setting, canvas background, and the like. So I'm going to canvas setting, and I'm going to change the size to the size that I want it to be. And that's going to be, for me, it will be 1600 in height, and then the width will be 964 pixel. Okay, so that's what we have here. I'm just going to fit this to page, and then I'll change the background color as well. I'm changing this to, once you click on that canvas background, I'll just change this to more colors, and then what I'm using is 33333. Okay, and then I'll hit enter. Once I've done that, the transparency is at 100%. So that's why it isn't reflecting. So I'm going to take that to 0. And then we have the background already sorted. So we'll go in with the card visual. So just under build here, you see the different type of visuals that we have. So what I'm going for is the card visual, the new one. So I'll click on card. Okay, pull it somewhere here. And then I'm also going to resize that. So I'll resize this here. So just under the format, you can see the size and style. So I'll resize this to 252. And then, so I'm resizing that the width now to 1100. Okay, so we have that. Okay, so I need to create some measures that will be used here. So measures are just calculations that are not in the table that you use on your own report or in the data set. So I'll just create it here. So I'll click on enter data. And most of the time when you're creating measures, you're using DAX, and which just means data analysis expression. The first measure I'm going to create here is the sum. So that's the sum of everything. So the total renewable energy consumption is what I'm going to name that. And that will be the sum of the values. So sum, we use the sum function, and then it's just the sum of the consumption here. Okay, I'm also going to put the unit here as TBTU. Created that now. And then I'm going to create another measure because it's the two of them that are going to be used in the card visual. The other measure I'll be creating is the top renewable source. So I'll just go ahead and new measure again. And this time let's name it top renewable source. So for us to do this, we're going to use variables, and variables are just placeholders for functions that you want to reuse. Okay, so we'll name the variable summary table. And then we'll use the summarize function. So summarize. The table here is data set. And then we have the column that we want to group by. So I'm just going to do. So the column I'm going to be grouping by is the energy source column, and next thing is the other column. So we're going to generate a column based off of that. Okay, and that would be, we'll name the column total consumption. And that column would just be the sum. So it's going to be the sum of the value or the sum of the consumption. So, okay. And then we can go ahead to close this one. That's the sum. And then close the summarize function. This summarize function just means that we have created a temporary summary table that groups the data set by the energy source and then calculates the total consumption for each energy source. Okay, so we'll continue with the formula. So the next thing we want to do now is to create another variable, okay? And this time the variable name would be variable top source. And then for this variable would give us the top row with the highest consumption or the highest value. That's just basically what it means. And for this, we'll be using the top n function. And then let's hit enter. So it asks you for what value you want. So we just want the first value. That's the highest one. And then we're going to use the summary table that we created. Summary table we created. And how do you want it just says order by expression. So I'm going to do total consumption, which is, we created that column in the previous in summary table. So there we go, total consumption. And then we want it in the descending order because obviously when it's descending, it just means that we'll have the highest value. Okay. So there we have that. So while this would give us the highest consumption, we don't want that. We want it to give us the name of the energy source with the highest consumption. We will return a value. So what this is giving us is just the value, but we want the energy source, not just the one with the topmost consumption. We want the energy source. So we'll use an aggregator function, that's maxx. And then for that one, it's going to ask us what table we'll be using. And the table we're using in this instance is the top source variable we created. And then we have that. And then we'll use the expression we're using is the energy source. So just click on that. And then, yeah, that's it. So let's hit enter. We can't see this now, right? Until we put it in the card visual that we created here. So let's just add the data. So we want the total renewable energy, that's one. So we have the total renewable energy. When I place this in here, it's showing me total renewable energy, and it's also showing me total it's showing me a higher value, and that's because I didn't take out the total renewable energy from the data set, which sums up everything, right? So we have to go back to Power Query and take that out. So that's something that you have to watch out for. Once I saw this value, I figured out that there's something definitely wrong and I didn't take that out. That can happen to you. So make sure that you're taking out the totals because you're still going to calculate it anyways. So I'm just going back here, and what I'm going to do is I'll just filter out total renewable energy from this. If I hadn't unpivoted other columns, I would just delete that row. But since I have, I'm just going to take this out and then okay. So let's close and apply, and let's see what happens. See, that changes it, and this is exactly what I was looking to get. So make sure that you are checking for errors like that, as it can happen to anyone. What I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and create all the visuals, and then we can edit the rest as we go. So the next thing I'm going to create is the donut chart. So I'll go ahead with this. So on the build segment here, you see donut chart, and just, move it here. So I'm going to resize that as well. For the donut chart, what I want to do is we're going to do the consumption by energy source. So let's get that. So the value here is total renewable energy consumption, and then we're going to split that by the energy source. Okay, so I mean, not the energy source, by the energy sector actually. So let's do that, and then there we have it. So I'm just creating all of it, and then I'll go ahead to change what needs to be changed. And the next thing we'll create is the line chart. The line chart here. For the line chart, what we have is we have the consumption again, and then we have the year. So we created the date table, so let's just use the year from here. Okay, so this is how we have it initially, and then the last one that we have is the bar chart, so the clustered bar chart. So the good thing about Power BI is that it shows you if your visual is aligned, right? So let's just do that. And the clustered bar chart is the sector, the energy source by the total renewable energy consumption. And then we have the consumption here. Okay, so this is just it, right? But we need to make it look better than it is right now. And then lastly, we have the slicers. So let's just use the old slicer. So for the slicer, I'm just going to resize that to be 92 by 220. Rather, it's 220 by 92. So the slicer is the year. And for that, you can see here, I'm just going to zoom in a bit so that you can see clearly. And then I'll close this. And also this, so just so that you can see clearly, we have this in between. We don't want that. I want it to be a drop down, right? So if I click on here and I go to format, I can change the slicer setting. Instead of between, I'm just going to change this to a drop down. Okay, and I'll just duplicate this twice here. Just need to move this a bit. So I'll fit it back to page so I can see everything clearly. Okay. Okay, so I'll just change the slicer now to sector and to energy source first. So close this and then energy source, and then this one would be the sector. So cancel this and add sector here. So we have basically everything that we need here, but we just need to make it look so much better than it is right now. So I'm going to start off with the line chart. So for the line chart, I'm going to turn off these grid lines that you see here. So let's go to format. And then under format, you can see everything that you need to, make your visuals look so much better than they are. So I'll turn that off. and I'll turn this one off as well. Then I also want to change the line color to green. Okay, so let's change that to, let's do, I'm just going to change it to the green that I was looking to get. So that one's changed. And then I have, so I'm going to turn off the y-axis, the year showing here. I don't want that to show. So I'm just turning off the x-axis. I meant to say I'm turning off the title, so year doesn't show there anymore. And because this isn't very visible, I'm going to increase it as well. So for the y-axis, I'm going to change the title to consumption, then TBT. Okay, so let's change that to a different font. So I'll just use Sego UI and increase that to, let me just make that smaller, 14. And then for the values as well, I'll also increase it. So let's change the values to 14, so it's very visible for us to see. And because Power BI is already summarizing this into units, I don't want that. I don't want it to be any of these units. I'm changing that to none so that it can really show. So that's 14,000 and the unit is in trillion BTU. So let's just leave it at that. Okay. The next thing we'll do is change the background of this area chart. So under size and style, you have background here. So I'm going to change that to this one, but I'm going to increase the transparency to about 17%. Okay, that's exactly what I was looking for. And because I've changed the background now, the text isn't looking as clear as it would have. Then I also changed the text as well, the text color on the y-axis and on the x-axis. So let's change that here. So I'll just change that to a different shade of green. Okay. Nope. And I'll do the same thing for the x-axis as well. So let's change the values to 14, the size, and then we'll change the color as well so that it's really visible. So what I want is that every point here should reflect. Okay, so I'm going to go to markers and let's change that to all categories, and then you can see that I'll also change how the line flows. This is just a preference thing. If you want to make it smoother, if you want to make it however you want to make it, if you want it dashed, if you want it dotted, whichever one you prefer. I just want every point to show. Okay, so that's that. That's all done here for the line chart. I also want to name the line chart. Let's name the line chart total consumption by year. So we have this here. So I'll change this as well to semi-bold. And then we can't see it here because it's in black. And I'll change the size. Let's do maybe 28. And then we'll change it to white so that it's very visible. So that's the total consumption by year. So that's done. And then for the borders, I want there to be like a really tiny border line and also for it to have a color on it. So I'm just going to close all of this once. And we'll go to size and setting, we'll go to background. See the visual border, we'll turn that on. And then we want it to have rounded corners. So let's just do 10 pixel and change that color to this green. Okay, let's see how it looks. So that's done. So we'll just copy this format onto this one. Let's see how that goes. So format painter, and then so it changes that, but not fully, not how I want it to. So I'm going to do this as well on this. It doesn't change the grid or anything, it just puts the border and the likes of it. And then I'll do the same for these ones as well. So I'll still go ahead and change all of that, but yeah. Okay, so let's now sort out these two. Going to change the title of this to energy consumption by sector or consumption by sector. Okay, so that's that one done. So now we want to change the color, so change that and also make it a bit bigger. And then I'm also going to change the legend as well, just increase it a bit so it's visible. Now change the color as well for that. So this, I don't want this color combination that Power BI is giving us, so I'm just going to go ahead and change that. Let's go to the slices now. So go for one deep green, one light one. I think we can leave this orange, but let's change the purple one to something else. No, no, it looks too pinky. Maybe we can leave it like this. You can choose whatever color you prefer, and that will be done for you. So this is all done. The it shows the percentage. I just want it to be the percentage, so I'm going to go ahead and change that as well. So I want the percent of total. I don't want it to be so, because we can easily view whatever. So if we choose industrial, for instance, we can see the total renewable energy here. So there's no point doing this. So I will change that. And then I want to do this line chart last. I mean the bar chart last, because there's a couple of things that I want to change there. Okay, so for the total renewable energy consumption, I will go ahead to, let's turn off the background first. Once we've turned that off, then we can go to the cards and then start to play around. So I'm just going to change this background color to this, and then just leave the transparency at 17%. Then I'll go ahead to change the text as well. So let's close all of this. So just to avoid any form of confusion, this is the color values here. Okay, so I'll change that to I'll change that to green. Okay, and then for the label as well, I'll change that to, let's see, maybe white. Let's increase that. I'm not going to make it bold, just playing around here. So that's the total renewable energy and the total renewable energy source all changed. But I don't want this to show in thousands, right? So I'm going to take that out. So under call out values, I have total renewable energy consumption. I want it to show as this. Okay, so that's done. I might reduce the label as well, just to make sure. So I'm going to do it for the two of them to avoid repetition of task. So let's just reduce the label value. Okay, so this is exactly what I was looking for. Then I want the cards to also, like, I want the border to be curved as well. So rounded, I want a rounded border. So just right on that size and style, we have the visual border. I'm just going to increase that to 10 pixel. So that's not what I wanted. So let me just go and just turn that off. Okay, and let's go to cards. So right here, under cards, you can see rounded rectangle, and then just change that to 10 pixel. So that's already changed. But then I also want to give it a glow, like an accent. So I'll go under card here, accent bar, and then just turn it on and probably put that to, yeah, let's just leave it as it is now, 10 pixel. So that's all of this sorted. And we'll go on to the slicer. Let's change the background. No, I mean the text. So values, we'll go to values and we'll increase that. So let's change it to this green. I need to get the title, the header rather, and change that as well. So I'll change that to white. So there we have that. So I'll just copy and paste this format on here and then do the same thing here. So we are finally coming to a close. We have this, which is the total renewable energy consumption by the energy source. So let's change the title of that first. So we just change that to energy consumption or consumption by energy source. So so we have that. But once again, we can barely see anything here. So let's change the values on the x-axis. And then I'll change this to this as well. So I'll increase that just a little bit more. And then I'll change this one here on the x-axis rather. So I don't want the values to show. I want it to be showing inside of this bars. Let's change the color of the bars to green. So we have this. And if you notice from my own report, the one I created, let's go there. You see that you had the energy source right on top of it. That's what we're about to do now. So you can leave it like this, it's okay. But if you want to change that, if you want it to look a bit different, then we'll go ahead and do that, okay? But for this one, we'll have to create two measures. So the first measure will be a baseline measure, and that'll just be 0. Then I will create another measure, and that would be baseline category. So I will use the selected value function, and I will just make that data set energy source. It just means whatever value you selected, that's what this function is for. Okay. So just before I do this, I want to add a filter here so that it will just be the top 10 instead of all of them, because we can always use the filter to get information for different energy sources. So let's change that to so underneath energy source, we just change that to top n. So top n just means maybe the n represents whatever number you want. So I want 10. Then it's asking what are we filtering by. So we're filtering by the total renewable energy consumption. So I'll just drag that on here and apply filter. So it gives me the top 10 values. So to put this on top of the bar, what I'll do is I will create the baseline now. And if I go to data labels, so I turn on data labels, I'm going to change the baseline to a different color so that you can see it clearly. Let's change that to white for now. So if I zoom in a bit, you can see that it shows 0. So when I zoom in, you can see that it shows 0K. It just shows that on top of everything. So what we'll do now is we'll replace this 0K with the measure of baseline category. Okay, so let's do that. So under value here, under data labels, once you've selected baseline, under value, you change the field here to baseline category. So you can see that that then comes on top of it. You can see biomass energy, wood energy, and the likes of it. Well, I want it to be on top, right? So I will move this one underneath it. So it shows me this way, but now it's not in terms of consumption. So I'll change the filter context here. So I'm going to sort the axis by the total renewable energy consumption. So just these three dots here, sort axis, and then change it to this. So that changes everything, right? I'll go ahead now to turn off the values on the y-axis. So we have this, and then we'll turn off the legend as well. So now what we want to do is increase this biomass energy and the likes of it. So let's go back to data labels and then value. We increase that. Let's increase it to 14 or 15 or 16. And then I'll change the color as well to this, just so that it syncs with the value. And then for this data label out here, I want to change that as well. So I'll change this from baseline to the total renewable energy. And then I'll change this to inside end. And then I don't want it to be auto, so I'll change that to none so that the exact value can show there. So that's it. That's done. You can either do it this way or you just leave it the way the normal clustered bar chart would give it to you, but just in case you wanted to do that. Okay, just fit that back to page. The last thing we have to do here is to create the header. That's the name of the dashboard. So go to insert, and then we have text box here. No, this one's too large. And then just name it renewable energy consumption. Then I'll change the size to 32, or maybe we should do 36. And either leave it this way or add the US, but just because it's the US and not for the world, so USA. And then I want the background on. So once I click on this, on here, you can see background and I can just turn it off. So we have that all completed. Let's increase the size maybe. Okay, so that's all completed. If you look at the one that I showed at the beginning of the video, you'd see that there were some icons just hanging somewhere here and there. So I'll put those icons now. So I'll do that by inserting image. Once you go to insert, you can see image here. And then I have just insert each and every one of them. So just resize it to whatever size you want it to be. I'm going to rename this one. That's this particular card. So I renamed that to total consumption, and then I'll go ahead to add the other images. Okay, so I'll just resize this one and move it in here. Okay, then the last one. And then I'll resize that. So that is it, all done. You can go ahead to see how this filters. So this drop down, we want to change the background. Definitely, we want to change that background to black. So let's change that. So the values, let's change the background to maybe black. So yeah, that's much better. So we can just format painter on the rest of them. Okay, so that's all done. So if you select 1974, you see that this only shows you one value here. So we don't want this one to filter this. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and do that. So once that's selected, right under format here, click on that, see edit interactions, and we don't want this slicer to filter this. So once you click on none, it doesn't filter it anymore. Let's try. You can see that it filters every other thing, but not just this one. And then you can go ahead to edit any interaction for any slicer to visual. Different visuals can filter each other. So if I select, let's say residential, for instance, you can see that it shows you the renewable energy consumption for the residential sector over the years. And if you look here, you see that the value for 2024 is depleting, but that's only because the information we have for 2024 is just for a few months. So I'm going to take that out of this line chart. Let's do that. Let me go here and just so filters, and then for year I'm just going to remove 2024. So let's just do basic filtering, select all, and then uncheck that just so that it's showing the right thing. So that's it, all done. You can go ahead to build your own report and try other visuals as well. This is just a simple report that you can build. Let me know in the comment section if you are going to build this.
That's it, renewable energy consumption in the US. Let me know if you're going to build this project. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now.